Good morning. We are in the 9th day of Nisan, the 31st of March, and we're looking at we're learning the Maimer Vasua Onat Shitim from Tafresh Lamed Aleph, which means 5631 or 1871. Okay. So what we saw last thing is that the hay that's at the end of Tvu'ato, it says Tvu'ato with the hay, his produce. So the Rebbe here explained that Tuato with the hay means that you should be meditating, contemplating the letter hay. He gave an example of it that to contemplate, the beginning of contemplation is se'ora, is in the same way that the produce ripens in the field. You start from barley, then you come to wheat. And the barley's ripening time is from Pesach until Shavuos, and the wheat's ripening time is from Shavuos and on. Yeah. So one of those sukkahs, but there was supposed to be
harvest time was Sukkot.
Yeah, the end of the harvest time, so it ripens earlier. In any case, so what does that represent? The se'ora means shi'ur hay, means to contemplate the hay, like we just said. Contemplating the hay, he says, is that every person can contemplate from within themselves the beginning of speech coming out, which is the letter hay, which is just the air going through the windpipe. And so what he said here is that, first of all, when they came out of Egypt, they came out at the time of the ripening of the barley, and the sign there was, like if somebody was smart and they looked at it and they understood the sign, why are we coming up B'chodesh Aviv, in the month of Aviv, in the month of the spring, when the barley ripens, and it's even called the Chag Aviv, it's called the celebration or the festival of the spring, is because it's trying to tell us, it's trying to tell them and telling us that this is the time of year to contemplate that we're coming out of Egypt, that we're releasing ourselves from the bondage where the person feels that all that he is autonomous from God. And by contemplating the beginning of the air coming out of the windpipe, the letter hay, he begins to understand that really my origin is in Hashem, in the source of the speech. And that the world, the way it was created by speech, it indicates exactly that type of coming out. That originally all Hashem wanted, but in thought, all Hashem wanted was that there be a slight coming out of godliness, and that would be consciousness. The consciousness became the full gamut of speech. What does it mean that it became the full gamut of speech? That it became the chita. Eventually, it was supposed to become, chita is 22. 22 represents the 22 letters of the alphabet. That's already all the speech that the person does. And originally, that was supposed to be that all that he would talk all day would be Torah. And that way, his speech would connect him to godliness all the time. But the time of the year to begin to contemplate, to come out of Egypt, to come out of the state that I was in the winter. It's like in the winter, I'm in the state where I feel autonomous from Hashem, and now I'm renewing, or I'm finding a new purpose in reconnecting to Hashem through this beginning of speech contemplation. But the beginning of speech is the way I was supposed to be, just to be a slight coming out of Hashem's speech. And so that's Tvuato. That's what it means, Tvuato with a hey. But now there's also Tvuato with a vav. So we're in the end of page 5. V'shavuot u'bchinat tvuat vav. U'bchinat ilana dechai. Bchinat ki adam etz hasadeh. Zot haTorah Adam. Hu haTorah shenikra Adam. And Shavuos, because it's already the vav, it's Tvuato, the way we say it like it's a vav at the end. It's spelled as a hey, but we say it as if it's a vav. That's the way you should be talking. It's called the tree of life. And this is what represents that man is the tree of the field. What does it mean the man is the tree of the field? What kind of an image is that? What does it mean that man's a tree of the field? So he explains here, he says this is that you can learn from agriculture what you're supposed to be. It's running the same deciphering of looking at agriculture and saying, from agriculture I learn about myself. That's what it means. Man is the tree of the field. That he is, like, even if you take the whole human experience and you sort of map it onto the agricultural world, so out of everything, man would be like the tree. Right? The tree is obviously the king of the agricultural world, right? What else grows? So you have grasses, and you have vegetables, and you have bushes, and you have, and at the top of the rung there, there's 4 levels. The 4th level of agriculture is trees. In the same way that in general, man is the highest level of everything that's in the world. Like there's 4 different levels of the inanimate and the vegetable and the animal life, and then finally the speaker, man. So within the agricultural world, man is the tree. If I would map the whole thing onto the agricultural world, so I would find that man is the highest. So he's always the greatest in whatever world you look. So his counterpart, his corresponding element, what corresponds to him, will always be the greatest one. And that's Torah Adam. That's the Torah of man. The Torah itself, Torah shenikret Adam. The Torah itself is called man. Why is the Torah itself called man? Because we have Ramach Pikudin and Ramach Eivarin de Malka B'chinat Adam. Sorry. So the 248 positive prescriptive mitzvot correspond to the 248 organs of man. ובחינת אור אמת, כמו שכתוב, ונתתם לי אות אמת. ויש בזוהר דא אות וו, אילנה דחיי. And this whole description of what does it mean to have a letter of truth, a sign of truth in the Torah, which one of the letters in the Torah, which one of the of all these organs, these 248 organs, which one is the one that's considered to be related to truth? Now, truth here is a misnomer. You can't really call otemet a true sign, because that's not what it means. Otemet means that I give you my word. Tatem li otemet. He says, you give me a true sign. What do you mean true sign? I mean like a true sign. What I mean is, how are you going to give me your word? Meaning, how are you going to promise me that you will fulfill what you said? So what represents fulfillment in man is the letter Vav. The letter Vav here is obviously Yesod. That's what he's trying to say. That the Yesod, the foundation, the sphere of foundation, which is related to the procreative organ, that is the word that man has. What do you mean that's the word? It means that that's where he fulfills himself. How did Hashem make a covenant with Abraham? The first time he made a covenant, he took sacrifices and he cut them in half, and they passed in the middle. That was the regular way of making covenants at that time. But then Abraham said, but that was early, either when he was 70 or 75, and that was an early covenant on the land. But the real covenant on the land was when he made a covenant of circumcision with him. So what was the sign? Abraham was waiting for something, for God to give him his word, as it were. He said there has to be a sign. There has to be a sign of truth, meaning a sign of fulfillment, that you will keep your promise. So where is the sign of truth? Where was this done? That's the circumcision. It was done on the organ that's related to foundation. Because of what is it saying? It's saying that you and I have made a covenant, and you will fulfill your part. 100% you will fulfill it, and I carry the covenant on me all the time. And so what does that mean? That the organ of reproduction, that's where I'm fulfilled through, and that's where God fulfills His promise also. Yeah, I'm fulfilled through it because I can't live forever, and therefore that's how I continue the fulfillment of my heritage. And this is what I'm giving over to the world. So I give it through my organ of reproduction. And Hashem is giving me the covenant that he will be with us throughout the generations through that organ also. Meaning that all the coming generations will all have the same covenant. That's what Avram was waiting for the whole time. So that's called an ot emet. That's truly giving me your word. So it's not just you giving it to me, you're giving it to all the generations. And all this, this is called the tree of life. What do you think the tree of life was? People think it's a tree. Maybe in Gan Eden it was in the physical Gan Eden, maybe it was a tree. But really, it's like people who read all the ancient stories and they decide that they're going to come looking for the fountain of youth. They don't even know how to read. So when they read, they're literalists. And they think that in the past people talked literally, which is absolutely not true because people spoke metaphorically in the past. There was very little hard knowledge in the past. That's not how knowledge was transferred. In the past, I'm talking about 3,000, 4,000 years ago. The way the knowledge was transferred, knowledge that was worth transferring in words and not how do you make a fire. Fire you don't need to describe. Everybody knew. It was practical things. Everybody knew how to do it. It wasn't something that you didn't need to write a book on. Nobody wrote a book on how to make fire. It's not interesting because everybody knows how to do it. Today, you need to write a book because nobody knows how to do it. But in the past, 4,000 years ago, everybody knew how to do these basic things. That's not what they remembered words for. It's not what they eventually wrote on books. That wasn't the subject matter. What they tried to retain was much more, call it spiritual knowledge. The knowledge that was difficult to teach someone. You couldn't, with your hands, show it. Right? So what did they need to teach? They needed to teach something like, there's a fountain of youth. How would they tell you, look, there's a really important thing that you need to follow in life, a really important spiritual precept that you have to follow. How would you tell someone something like that? You would tell them, look, this is the fountain of youth. If you want your whole life to feel young, this is the thing you need to do. So they gave it an image like, oh, this is the fountain of youth. And then people came 2,000 years later and they're already idiots. They don't understand anything. So they read this and they say, oh, they're literalists. Meaning they mean they found the fountain of youth. And then they go looking for it. What are you talking about? They didn't talk about fountain. They didn't find anything. Same thing with the tree of life. The Zohar comes and says, what are you talking about? The tree of life is not a place. We don't have that place. There's no place like that. We don't know how to get there. If there was such a thing, we don't know what it is. And even we're not sure even if there was such a thing. Maybe this is all something spiritual. Maybe. No, I'm not saying that it is. I'm saying maybe it is. So if I treat it like there's something spiritual, like there's something metaphoric going on here, so where is the tree of life? I'm saying it's the letter Vav. What do you mean that's the letter Vav? Now we'll see. But what he wants to say is that it's in the Torah. That's where the tree of life is. And the tree of life is what we call the Torah. Why do we call it the Torah? Meaning that in the garden there was the tree of life that was the Torah. Why not just call it the Torah? Because back then, if you said to someone, or even today, if you said to someone, look, there's this thing called Torah, it's really, really good. It's going to make your life different. So how do you say that nicely? You say, oh, this is the tree of life. When you follow this, you'll feel life. You'll feel alive. You'll feel that everything is different. So what is this? He says, in general, this is the letter Vav. And when we say Tvuato, his produce with a Vav, that's what we're referring to. And he says, and the Jewish people are the beginning of his produce. His produce here is the Vav, is the tree of life, is the Torah. So Israel are the beginning of the Torah. What do you mean by that? So if before we said that it's just an organ, this is not just an organ. Really, what I'm saying by the whole sentence is Reshit Vuato, that it's the beginning of the organ, but it's the beginning of all the produce that he has. What's all the produce that he has? The Torah itself. It's the tree of life. It says it. From this we learn that the Jewish people are higher than the Torah, higher than the mitzvos. Their source is higher. Because they're called the beginning of it. What comes before. Reshit is not just, it's like the head of it. שהתורה היא בחינת כלה ארוסה לנשמות ישראל שנקראים בשם חתן. And the sages teach us, this is even in the Talmud, that the verse that says, Torah tzivah lanu Moshe, the Torah was commanded to us by Moshe, Morasha Kilat Yaakov, the congregation of Israel. So don't read Morasha as a tradition of the congregation of Israel, as tradition, Morasha. Read it as betrothed, Me'orasa. That's the medrash that the sages taught. What do you mean that she's Me'orasa? What do you mean she's betrothed? Meaning that she's the bride. Who's the groom? The groom is the Jewish people themselves. So who's affecting who? Who is providing for who? So the groom provides for the kala, for the wife. So the Torah here is considered to be affected, provided for by the Jewish people. And it's very simple also. And, this is one of the things that in Pnimius Torah, the whole problem with the people don't follow Torah today, because they never heard of Pnimius Torah. They never heard of what the Torah says internally. Externally, you come to a home and you see that the woman runs the home. And you see that everything goes according to what she says. Very nice. Okay. You want to be in this home. So what do you have to do? You have to help with cleaning the dishes, and you have to do this and this. And it's like you're staying there and you have to follow the instructions. And you say, why would I want to stay in a place like this? All they want me to do is do physical labor all day long. And then suddenly at night, the husband comes home, and he sees that the wife, she's completely listening to her husband. What does it mean? He starts saying great words of wisdom, and she listens. She doesn't say yes or no. She doesn't. She comes and says, "Look, everything that you just said, I can make in practice. How can I make it in practice?" So then he begins to understand that everything he did during the day, it was really an embodiment. It was a manifestation. It was an application of what the husband said the night before. The Torah is the same way. A person can look at it from the outside and say, "Oh, this is just one big rule book. All it says is you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this." I'm not interested. I want to do my own thing. But then if he listens to what the Torah says at night, then he suddenly hears that the Torah is saying, I'm not saying what to do just because it's what to do. I myself am listening to something higher. What am I listening to? To my husband. Who's my husband, it turns out? You. You yourself. Meaning all these things that I said you should do, they were just an application of what your soul told me. That's what he's saying here. That the Jewish people come before the Torah, as it were. They're the ones influencing the Torah. Why does the Torah say to do this and to do that? Because this is exactly what your soul is saying. You're the husband here. You're the one whose words I've taken, whose needs I've taken and translated, applied into the physical world. And so that's why you have all these rules that I want you to keep. But really, where's it all coming from? From you yourself. People don't keep Torah because they don't understand that the Torah is not some kind of rule book that's demanding them to change. They don't understand that the Torah is mirroring, it's completely applying what they have in their own souls. They haven't learned Pnimius Torah. They haven't. So this is the main thing of learning Pnimius Torah, of learning the inner dimension of Torah, where he says that everything that the Torah says is because it came from you yourself. You are the one who influenced the Torah to be this way. We'll continue, hopefully, next week on Sunday.
If you will like. So this is an invitation to come to